My parents flat out refused to get my kids anything for Christmas. If you helped us out more, maybe they'd get something, they said. That's when I finally cut them off, and just a week later, everything changed. I always knew my folks weren't exactly the nurturing type. They never really had that warm, loving vibe. But I never imagined they'd stoop this low. I'd been sending them money for years, keeping their lights on, handling surprise bills, slipping them extra cash whenever they claimed to be hurting. It wasn't easy on my end either. I had a wife, 2 young kids, and a mortgage that didn't pay itself. But still, I kept helping because they were my parents. And no matter how little they appreciated it, I felt like it was my job to look after them. Well, that all changed last week. With Christmas coming up, I did something I rarely ever did. I asked them for a favor. Nothing big. Just a small present for each of my kids. Something to show they cared, that's all I wanted. I wasn't asking for anything for myself. Just a little gesture for my kids. But I should have known better. My mom gave me this dismissive wave and scoffed. If you helped us more, maybe they'd get something. I just blinked for a second, unsure I heard her right. More? I asked. Mom, I send you money every single month. Dad leaned back in his chair, arms folded across his chest. And you think that's enough? Do you have any idea how much we struggle? I clenched my jaw, trying hard not to lose it. I struggle too, I told them. But I still make sure my family's taken care of. Mom rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. Oh please. You've got a house, a car, a steady job. We've got nothing. Nothing? I nearly laughed. They had my money. My support. My patience. And still, it was never enough. I looked at them, searching for even a flicker of guilt, a hint that they knew how unfair they were being. But all I saw was entitlement. That was it for me. That's when I knew I was done. I walked out of their house without another word. Normally, I'd hang around, maybe argue a bit, maybe even give in and hand over more money just to avoid the guilt trip. But not this time. This time, something inside me snapped. All the way home, my mind was racing. I kept thinking about all the years I bent over backwards for them, how they never once said thank you. It was always about what more I could do. What I owed them. Like being their son meant I was some kind of permanent safety net. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my mind was made up. I walked inside, kissed my wife, ruffled my little boy's hair, and sat down on the couch. Then I grabbed my phone and did something I should have done a long time ago. I canceled the monthly payments to my parents' account. No more automatic deposits. No more emergency handouts. I stopped treating them like they were my responsibility. I had my own family to think about now. At first, I braced for the backlash. Phone in hand, I waited for the flood of angry calls and guilt-laced texts. But an hour passed. Then 2. Then the whole night. Not a peep. They hadn't even noticed. I almost laughed. Of course they hadn't. They were so used to my money showing up like clockwork, they probably wouldn't realize anything was wrong until a bill bounced. And when that happened? Well, I was kind of curious to see how they'd handle it. Turns out it took 6 days. Exactly 6 days before my phone started blowing up with Mom on the other end. At first, I let her stew. Ignored the calls. I knew exactly why she was suddenly so desperate to reach me. But by the 7th call, curiosity got the better of me. I answered, keeping my voice steady. Hello? Do you think this is funny? She snapped. No hi. No how are you? Just straight to outrage. Classic. I leaned back on the couch. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb, she hissed. The money. It didn't show up this month. You forgot to send it. I almost laughed. The idea that I could forget, as if not giving them money couldn't possibly be a choice. No, I said plainly. I didn't forget. Silence. Then her tone softened into that sugary sweet act she always pulled when she wanted something. Honey, we're behind on bills. Things are really hard for us. You can't just stop helping. Actually, I said, and man, it felt good to say it, I can. I have a wife and kids of my own to take care of. I'm done putting you two before them. The act dropped. How could you do this to us? She shrieked. We raised you, and this is how you repay us? I clenched my jaw, held my ground. You couldn't even buy my kids a Christmas gift, I said, my voice cold. You literally said if I helped more, maybe they'd get something. Well, I'm not helping anymore. So I guess that means they get nothing, right? She stumbled, caught off guard. That was a joke. You're being ridiculous. No, I said calmly. I'm being fair. Then I hung up. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I figured they'd blow up my phone again right away, maybe even show up at my door. But instead? Silence. 4 days. No calls. No texts. Nothing. At first, I thought maybe they were trying to freeze me out, hoping I'd feel guilty and cave. But I knew better. This wasn't pride, it was denial. They still believed I'd come crawling back like always. Then, about a week later, reality must have finally sunk in. Because my dad, who never calls me unless he needs something, rang my phone late one night. I let it ring. Then it rang again. And again. By the 4th call, I picked up, keeping my tone casual. Hey, Dad. Everything all right? The second he spoke, I could hear the strain in his voice. Son, listen, we need to talk. I almost laughed. Son. Suddenly I was son again. Not selfish or ungrateful, just son. Funny how that changes when they need a favor. I leaned back in my chair. Talk about what? There was a pause, and then that familiar mix of guilt and pressure in his voice. Your mother and I, we're in a tight spot right now. Bills are piling up, and without that money, we're falling behind. I said nothing. Just wanted to see where he'd go with it. I know you're upset, he went on, but don't punish your own parents over one little misunderstanding. That was it for me. Right there. Proof he still didn't get it. To him, this wasn't years of treating me like an ATM. It wasn't about all the times they dismissed my sacrifices or ignored my struggles. No. In his eyes, it was just one little misunderstanding. I took a breath and said, if you'd shown me even a little respect, maybe I'd still be helping. Then I hung up. And this time? I blocked their numbers. For good. Blocking their numbers felt like I could finally breathe again after years of being smothered. No more guilt-ridden phone calls. No more sudden emergencies that somehow always meant I had to open my wallet. No more being treated like my only worth came from what I could give. For the first time in forever, I felt free, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. Christmas was right around the corner, and instead of stressing about how much money I had to fork over to my parents, I finally did what I should have been doing all along. I spoiled my wife and kids. I didn't hold back. My son got the gaming console he'd been dreaming about for years. The look on his face alone made it worth it. My daughter? She got the giant dollhouse she wouldn't stop talking about. The one with working lights and an elevator. And my wife, God, she'd been my anchor through every storm. I surprised her with a weekend getaway for just the two of us. Something we hadn't done in years because I'd always put my parents' needs first. This time, it was about us. It was about the family I chose to build and protect. When Christmas morning came and I saw my kids light up like it was magic, I knew I'd made the right choice. And for once, I wasn't glued to my phone, bracing myself for another crisis or demand. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was just happy. But deep down, I knew my parents wouldn't stay quiet forever. They never did. While I was finally finding peace, they were stewing, angry, confused, probably plotting. Christmas passed, and for the first time in years, I felt like I'd finally cut the cord. My wife and I sat back, sipping coffee, watching our kids tear through wrapping paper and laugh without a care. The house was filled with the kind of joy I didn't even realize had been missing. But peace doesn't last long when you're dealing with people like my parents. It started small. A few missed calls from random numbers. Then my wife told me someone had called the landline, asked for me, then hung up the second she answered. I knew exactly who it was. They were circling, testing the waters, trying to see if I'd crack. But I didn't. Then came New Year's Eve. Just past 10, the doorbell rang. My stomach dropped. I already knew. My parents never showed up uninvited unless they wanted something. My wife gave me a questioning look. You expecting someone? She asked. I just shook my head and went to the door. I didn't even need to peek, I already knew. But I looked anyway. There they were. My mom, arms crossed and looking like she was ready for battle. My dad stood beside her, already annoyed. I opened the door, but I didn't invite them in. "What are you doing here?" I asked flatly. Mom scoffed. "Seriously? You're going to leave your parents standing out here in the cold?" I raised an eyebrow. "Why not? You had no problem leaving my kids out in the cold on Christmas." That stung. I saw it in her eyes. She shot a glance at my dad, maybe hoping he'd back her up. He didn't. He just sighed and ran a hand through his gray hair. "Can we just talk?" he said, trying to sound reasonable. "This has gone too far." Too far? I almost laughed. But I was curious. What was the game plan here? Were they here to apologize? Beg? Manipulate? Talk about what? I asked, leaning against the doorframe. Mom threw up her hands. "We're struggling, all right? Bills are piling up, rent's late, and there's barely anything to eat in the fridge." I tilted my head. "And?" She looked stunned. Like she couldn't believe I didn't immediately offer to save them. "And," she snapped, "you need to help us. We wouldn't even be in this situation if you hadn't just cut us off without warning." There it was. The same old script. The same refusal to take any responsibility. I crossed my arms. "You mean you wouldn't be in this mess if you'd actually planned ahead instead of using me like a bank? Or maybe if you hadn't blown through the money I already gave you?" Mom's face turned red. "How dare you talk to us like that? How dare I?" I shot back. "You didn't even think my kids deserved a $10 gift. And now I'm supposed to swoop in and rescue you?" Dad finally spoke again, voice low. "We didn't think you'd actually go through with it." And there it was, the truth. They never thought I had it in me to cut them off. In their minds, I was still the little boy desperate for their approval. The one who always came running when they snapped their fingers. I gave a cold smile. "Well, now you know I wasn't bluffing." Dad clenched his jaw. "So that's it? You're just gonna let your parents suffer?" I pretended to think about it, then shrugged. "Maybe if you'd shown me some respect, I would have helped." Mom gasped like I'd slapped her. Before they could say another word, I shut the door in their faces. They pounded on it, yelling my name, but I didn't budge. I had a real family to care for. And for once, they came first. The banging lasted another minute before it stopped. Through the peephole, I watched them exchange frustrated glances, completely lost on what to do next. For a second, I half expected them to try and force their way in. But then Mom shook her head and stormed off. Dad muttered something under his breath and followed. I waited until I heard their car drive away before I turned back to my wife. She stood there, arms folded, face unreadable. "They'll be back," she said. I nodded. "I know." And she was right. Over the next few days, the messages poured in. Some were angry. Others were pitiful. "Mom, how can you be so heartless? We're your parents." "Dad, you'll regret this. Don't think we'll forget." "Mom again, we're starving. Do you really want that on your conscience?" I didn't reply. Not once. I wasn't falling for it. Not this time. Then, 5 days in, my sister called. We weren't close. She'd always stayed on the sidelines, pretending the drama didn't involve her. But now? Now she wanted to talk. I let it go to voicemail. But she left a message. "Hey. I don't know what's going on between you and Mom and Dad, but they called me crying. They said they have no food, no heat, and that you won't even talk to them. I get that they're not easy to deal with, but come on, they're still our parents. Can't you at least hear them out?" I stared at the phone, debating. Then it hit me. They weren't just coming after me anymore. They were trying to turn the rest of the family against me. Classic move. I'd seen them do it before. The second you stopped feeding their ego or their bills, they'd twist the story so you looked like the villain. I wasn't letting them control the story this time. So, I did something I'd never done before. I called my sister back. She picked up right away. Finally. "I've been trying." I cut her off. "Did they tell you why I stopped helping them?" She paused. They said you just suddenly decided to be selfish. I laughed, dry and bitter. Of course they did. Then I told her everything. The years of financial help. The complete lack of appreciation. The Christmas with nothing for my kids. And how the second I stopped enabling them, they tried to guilt me back into place. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. I had no idea, she finally said. Because they didn't want you to know, I told her. They'd rather paint me as the bad guy than admit they're the ones who caused this. She sighed, and for the first time in a while, I felt like maybe someone actually understood. I mean, I get it, you're upset. But don't you think cutting them off entirely is a little extreme? I shut my eyes for a second and took a deep breath. Then I looked at her and said, let me ask you something. How much money have you given them? She went quiet. Just stared at me for a moment. Then finally, in a small voice, she said, I haven't. Exactly. She might have felt a twinge of guilt, but me? I didn't. Not anymore. That part of me was burned out. I had done more than my fair share. Bent over backward, actually. And I wasn't about to let myself get guilt-tripped into wrecking my own family's happiness just to keep enabling two people who never once showed any real appreciation. If you feel that bad for them, I told her, you're free to send them money yourself. She didn't have a comeback for that. Just muttered, I'll think about it. But we both knew she wouldn't. Deep down, she knew I was right. Our parents had spent years digging their own hole. And now, they were finally being made to sit in it. After that call with my sister, everything went quiet. Almost too quiet. No phone calls. No texts. No surprise knocks at the door. For a split second, I let myself hope maybe they had finally backed off. That maybe they realized I wasn't playing the hero this time. But deep down, I knew better. I knew them. Sure enough, a few days later, my wife got a text from my mom. I don't know why he's acting like this. We're his parents. Maybe you can talk some sense into him? When my wife showed me the message, I nearly laughed. They really think going through you is gonna change my mind? I said, shaking my head. She smirked. They don't know me very well, do they? Right there in front of me, she typed out a reply, he made his decision. I support him 100%. Don't contact me again. And just like that, she blocked the number. I pulled her into a hug and kissed her forehead. I don't deserve you. She gave me a soft smile. No, maybe not. But you deserve better than them. And for the first time in a long time, I actually believed that. A few more days passed. Then a full week. The silence should have been comforting, but instead, it felt like the stillness before a thunderstorm. I knew them too well. They weren't the type to accept defeat. They were just regrouping. And I was right. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon. My wife and I had just finished lunch and were cleaning up when the doorbell rang. She looked at me with raised eyebrows. You think? I sighed. Yep. I walked over and opened the door. And there they were, my mom, my dad, and, of all people, my sister. I raised an eyebrow. Wow. A whole intervention team, huh? Mom had her hands folded like she was praying, her face wearing this exaggerated look of sorrow. We just want to talk, she said. I almost laughed. Last time you said that, you were demanding money. So, what's different now? My sister stepped forward, looking uneasy. Please, she said. Just, hear them out. I thought about slamming the door right then and there. But something in her expression gave me pause. She didn't look like she was here to play defense. She looked torn. Conflicted. I sighed. Fine. I stepped aside and let them in. They settled onto the couch like they were sitting on pins and needles, while I leaned back against the wall with my arms crossed. All right, I said. Go ahead. Let's hear it. Mom jumped right in. We're struggling. We've made some mistakes, okay? But family doesn't turn its back. You've always helped us before. Why stop now? I let out a bitter laugh. Why stop now? Because I finally realized that helping you was never really helping me. Every time I gave, you took. And never once did you stop to say thank you. Dad leaned forward, rubbing his temples. We were never ungrateful. I shook my head and laughed again. Really? Then why did you say my kids didn't deserve Christmas presents because I wasn't helping enough? Let's be real, if I wasn't handing you money, I meant nothing to you. Mom opened her mouth like she was gonna argue, but then she clammed up. My sister looked back and forth between us. Look, she said, I get it. They've leaned on you too much. But cutting them off completely? That's a lot. I turned and looked her in the eyes. Have you helped them? She didn't answer. Didn't have to. The way she looked away told me everything. I'm done, I said, turning back to Mom and Dad. I've got a family of my own now. A real family. One that loves me for who I am, not for what I can give. Mom's face turned cold. Her voice dropped to a hiss. You're making a mistake. I smiled. No. I'm finally fixing one. Then I walked over and opened the door. Time to go. Dad mumbled something under his breath, but he stood up. Mom lingered, shooting me a glare like she was trying to guilt-trip me through sheer eye contact. It didn't work. One by one, they stepped outside. Just before I shut the door, I looked at my sister and said, you should ask yourself why they always come to me first. And why they'll never ask you. She looked like she wanted to say something, but in the end, she just sighed and followed them down the steps. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned my back against it, exhaling like I'd just put down a 100-pound weight. My wife came into the hallway, watching me carefully. You okay? I paused. Thought about all those years of stress and guilt, all those times I had to choose between my own peace and their endless needs. And for the first time in years, I felt light. I smiled. Yeah. I really am. The next few days were quiet. Peaceful. No more late-night calls. No more guilt-tripping texts. No more being treated like an ATM with a heartbeat. My parents? They never reached out again. Maybe they finally got the message. Or maybe they just moved on to someone else. Didn't matter either way. Because I had my real family now. The one I'd built. The one that actually cared about me, not what I could do for them. One night, as I was tucking the kids into bed, my son looked up at me with a big grin. Dad, he said, this was the best Christmas ever. And in that quiet little moment, I knew. Walking away from them was the best decision I'd ever made.